Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies. But it's no surprise that the Green fanatics in the Scottish government, where they know how to be fanatics, have had to backtrack on their flagship greenhouse gas reduction target. The SNP has committed to reducing Scotland's CO2 emissions by 75% by 2030. Now, the Climate Change Committee has reviewed its policy and advised that the absurd reduction target is out of reach.
Can we accept the CCC's recent re-articulation that this Parliament's interim 2030 target is out of reach? We must now act to chart a course to 2045.
It is time to recognise the truth that net zero by 2050 is unrealistic and unaffordable. It's time we rid ourselves of this foolish and costly idea that will simply make people cold and poor. We need to prioritise cheap energy for Britain's consumers and for companies, for industry, enabling economic growth that will benefit us all.
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday Five. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albion and Kona, Nikki Hodgson, Ben Leo and Alex Armstrong. Tonight on the show...
Why does the BBC's Eurovision pick hate our union flag?
And as the Garrick Club votes to allow women in as members, is it too little too late?
Yet again, Meghan Markle tries to make a foreign nation all about her.
Surprise, surprise. The Bank of England says mass migration is fuelling the housing crisis.
And has the Labour Party gone far right?
It's 6 p.m. and this is the Saturday Five. Welcome to the Saturday Five. Yes, it's that Saturday night of the year which is always given over to ridiculous outfits, dodgy dancing and higher levels of camp than you get on RuPaul's Drag Race. But if you're not a Saturday Five fan, some event called the Eurovision Song Contest is on one of the other channels. Neil Bois, as always, for Benjamin Butterworth, he's in Yemen on yet another of his climate-neutral holidays. But Albie and Ben are here as always, and we're joined by the brilliant broadcaster and journalist, Nikki Hodgson, and the fantastic political commentator, Alex Armstrong. Now, you know the drill. We each take it in turn to introduce a topic, and then the rest of us weigh in to tell them why they're completely wrong about everything. You wonderful viewers, never hesitate to jump in as well. Send your views and post your comments on gbnews.com/your say. And don't forget, ask your questions and get them in for Ask the Five. That segment's coming in hour 2. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday night news with Aaron.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Netherlands entry has been disqualified from the grand final of the Eurovision Song Contest. Singer and rapper Joost Klein won't compete while Swedish police investigate a complaint of inappropriate behaviour made by a member of the production crew. Separately, Ireland's entrant, Bambi Thug, missed dress rehearsals over what they've described as an incident which needed urgent attention from the European Broadcast Union. Now, tonight's final takes place against the backdrop of huge pro-Palestinian demonstrations in the city of Malmo. And they're protesting against Israel's participation in the contest. They're marching from the city centre and now gathering, as you can see, outside the venue. Fans are also arriving at the Malmo Arena, and here's what some of them have been saying.
I think it's great that they have that the EBU didn't back down cowardly from the protesters, and they included Israel and didn't like tamper with votes or anything. They let them through the final.
I understand it. I personally disagree with their involvement, and a lot of the stuff that's happened in the past 24 hours generally in Eurovision, like with the possible disqualification of the Dutch representative, all the videos coming out from inside the arena in general, it's become a bit too much.
We're here to enjoy the stuff, Bambi's here to enjoy it, and we're not bringing politics into it at all.
I'm not particularly political, so I tend to stay out of it, and I think a competition like this, it's about bringing people together, not, trying to cause a lot of diversity, so, division, I just don't think that's the right kind of attitude to have about Eurovision.
We have managed to avoid most of anything that's going on, and I think, to be fair, it's been a little bit exaggerated by broadcasting. No, nothing against you guys.
No, the Israeli army has ordered new evacuations for various parts of the Gaza Strip as it expands its military operation. And more neighbourhoods in Rafah have been told to evacuate to so-called humanitarian areas in the west. Some 300,000 Palestinians have already left southern Gaza. But Israeli forces have also told residents in northern Gaza to evacuate, prompting fears of an assault on two fronts. The UK and its allies have warned Israel against carrying out a military offensive in Rafah. A 17-year-old boy has died after getting into trouble while swimming in the town of Wellingborough. Ronald's Abele was found in the water by rescue crews yesterday after reports he got into difficulty in open water at the embankment. In Northamptonshire, police say it was a tragic incident, and Ronald's family have requested privacy at this very distressing time. A police officer has been shot in the leg with a crossbow in Buckinghamshire. The officer was responding to reports of a stabbing in High Wycombe last night. He was hospitalised but has since been released. A 54-year-old man's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. He was shot by an armed officer. He's now in hospital under police supervision with potentially life-changing injuries. Two men have been arrested on suspicion of murder after two women died in a house fire in Wolverhampton. Emergency services were called to a property in the Dunstall Hill area at 2 a.m. West Midlands Fire Service says 3 other people were injured and taken to hospital. A 6th person was discharged at the scene. Meanwhile, drivers in Surrey have been struggling with disruption because of a huge closure on the M25. It's an unprecedented closure, in fact, of the motorway. 5 miles between junctions 9 and 10 are closed until 6 a.m. on Monday. It's created a 19-mile diversion, which is causing delays, as you can imagine. It's the first scheduled daytime shutdown of all the lanes on the M25 since it opened in 1986. And authorities in Ibiza and Mallorca have issued a new booze ban in an effort to crack down on what they call excessive tourism. The sale of alcohol in shops and off licences will be banned from 9:30 in the evening until 8 a.m. in some popular hotspots like Magaluf, Playa de Palma and San Antoni. There will also be further restrictions on party boats in an effort to combat antisocial behaviour and booze-fuelled holidays. It follows complaints from local people. Those who break the law could be fined up to £1,300. And finally, if you missed the Northern Lights last night, which lit up the skies across Britain, well, don't worry, because they may return in your part of the country later. It is caused by charged particles hitting the different gases in the Earth's atmosphere, and normally only visible in the far north of the country. But tonight, hopefully it'll be clear where you live, because they should be visible again tonight. Sometime after 10:30 will be best. And you can get more on all of our stories by signing up to our alerts. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes and you're very welcome to settle down and enjoy the liveliest debate show on telly. And actually, I'm the only Northern Light that you need, folks. So sit down and crack on. We'll crack on with tonight's first discussion. Which reprobate is going to lead us off first?
It'll be me. Of course it's me. Albie, A for Albie, is first. So later on tonight, it is the Eurovision Song Contest over in Malmo. And typically, our UK's Eurovision entrant, Ollie Alexander, is so disgraced by our great Union flag that he thinks it's nationalistic and divisive. I say make pop stars patriotic again. Who can remember that amazing performance that the Spice Girls did back in 1997 where Geri Halliwell wore that fantastic Union flag dress? How times have changed. I wish we could go back to a time where our great flag wasn't seen as something which was divisive. It was seen as something which was unifying. And someone who's representing Britain on the international stage at the Eurovision Song Contest, like Ollie Alexander, should be proud to bear the Union flag.
Yeah.
Nicky Hobson, you are replacing Benjamin Butterworth this evening, as you well know. It is your ilk, lefties, that have a problem with this amazing flag. Why?
Well, I did just want to correct your pop history for a while there, because actually, think about the Sex Pistols, they distorted the Union Jack. And then further back in the 60s, some of the 60s pop bands like the Kinks, etc. There's actually been a long history of our pop stars saying no.
Yeah, but we're only born in the 90s, so this would have...
Well, I realise, I'm much older than you guys. But, I mean, actually, are you not a proper pop star if you don't challenge the status quo? Isn't it that's what it's actually about? It's not because they don't love their country or care about their country. It's just because they're trying to kick up a fuss to look cool and different, and they have to kind of like separate themselves from...
Last year, the Eurovision entrant for Britain, May Muller, said she hated Britain. That's not being anti-establishment, that's just being rude.
Well, it's been silly when you're supposed to be representing the country. Why do it otherwise? I kind of do take your point on that. But I do think that, you know, you're just expecting too much of them. Like, they don't have to think for us, they just have to sing and dance for us.
They're just kids, Albie.
Ollie Alexander's the same age as you.
How old is he?
About 30, mid-30s.
I'm 18 next week. 30s? No, I'm joking. No, they're just, as Nicky alluded to, they're just young. I mean, Ollie might be 34, but he's clearly a very immature guy, which is a shame because I love Years and Years. I've seen them live at festivals. I thought he was great. I thought the band was great, top tunes. But there just seems to be this trendy thing where if you self-loathe the country you're from, then you seem to be in with the kids. I think actually these guys, people like Ollie and May Muller, they've got it too easy. Life is too easy, so they just look for something to kind of rail against because they've got nothing else, you know, important going.
This is a Brit Award-nominated pop star, Alex Armstrong. Do you think that when he next gets nominated for a Brit Award, he'll have to reject it because of the nationalistic and divisive word Brit?
No, because do you know what I think it is? Look, he's part of the LGBTQIA plus something community, right?
The alphabet.
The alphabet spaghetti mafia, right? So I think he's been properly indoctrinated by them, a bit like Sam Smith, right? You know, he just comes out with nonsense, but I think it's part of his gig now to be anti-British flag, because I don't even think he understands what he's saying, because I don't think half these pop stars are political. They've got too much money and way too much spare time on their hands to be political.
Why is it cool?
So because I think it's part of that political agenda. And
what political agenda?
If he says, no, I'm very proud to be British, you'll have his alphabet spaghetti people come after him and he'll lose some of the people that are streaming his music.
But Geri Halliwell did it very effectively, Darren.
This is a sickness that's, over the last decade or so, infected the West. It's not just isolated to Britain. There is a narrative that says that hating your country is the progressive thing to do, and I think the left have got a real case to answer there for being utterly negligent and actually pretty harmful when it comes to actually speaking up for the values that this country represents. You know, it wasn't too long ago we saw in Hong Kong people flying the Union Jack, British nationals overseas, saying, actually, when we have the jackboot of President Xi at our throat, we want to be flying this flag and remember the values that were here when the British were actually our, well, I guess you would call it the modern language, oppressors. And actually, we were their liberators. So all of these things, I think, it just comes down to the fact that the BBC are part of this agenda. They hate this country, and they keep selecting candidates that also hate this.
I mean, the BBC would really refute saying they hate that. You would say that the BBC hates this country. What evidence do you have to say that the BBC hates this country?
Tweeted she saying, "I hate this country." That's pretty clear as day. And this candidate today, this time around, this year, says that he isn't proud to fly the Union Jack because it's nationalistic.
Nicky, what do you think?
No. I just think it's about children in pop wanting to rail against...
These aren't children.
But they are, because they're so mature. I think, you know, they haven't got life experience. They're just happy to be kind of singing and dancing on TV and for people to look at them. And that's all it's about. And they just think, oh, I have to be a bit different. I have to be a little bit cool. And the only way I can do that is just to, you know, pretend that I don't believe in the status quo.
Can I just say,
it's that simple.
I'm happy for Ollie Alexander to do his thing if it means we haven't got something akin to the Irish entry, which is, like, very demonic and satanic. satanic.
I think it's demonic in its own way. Have you seen what he's doing for his act? He's dancing in a bathroom. Is it a bathroom or meant to be like some sort of sauna with a bunch of blokes touching him and rubbing him? I was like,
That's not highly British. What are you talking about?
What is it? I don't know.
Traditional.
It's not my weekend certainly don't look like that. I don't know what Benjamin would do anymore with saunas.
And exclusive on Nicky Hodgson.
No, I say from the point of being a dating historian and knowing all about that stuff. It's been around
took a long time
forever.
in that Right, I'm going to have my say next. And, folks, I tell you, you just got to laugh. Meghan Markle has found some ancient ancestry to Nigeria. She's something 30-odd% or something, apparently, Nigerian. You know, I went through my ancestry during lockdown when we all had, well, self-isolation, enforced isolation in our homes. And I found out that I have Irish ancestry. So I say to the Irish, I'm going to turn up tomorrow in Ireland and declare that I'm home. Welcome back. Because that's exactly what Meghan Markle's done. She's made her entire identity to score some points on the old diversity checklist now about Nigeria. She thanked them for welcoming her home. Now, some genealogists actually suggest that she might be Ghanaian, and the Sussex-loving press are absolutely lapping it up. I think it's extraordinary. And
I don't think it's extraordinary at all.
Meghan,
no, you don't understand African-American culture in that sense, because it's a really big thing for black people in the New World, so people who would have gone to America and the Caribbean as slaves initially and who are now, descended from slaves, to find out what their ancestry is and then go back to that place and feel like they are from somewhere, because these people, they can't track their ancestry back more than 100 years. They don't even have their own family name. Now, I'm of African descent. That is not my experience. It's completely different. But I think for you to say it's outrageous that Meghan's gone to Nigeria and she says she's gone home, that is something that a lot of African Americans do and a lot of black Caribbeans do. And would you seriously say to them it's stupid for them to go to Africa and feel like they're at home?
No, but Meghan Markle...
Yes, I would say that.
Why?
You just told us week on week that multiculturalism has been...
This is nothing to do with multiculturalism.
Well, how is it...
What's this got to do with multiculturalism?
To turn up somewhere and say,
I'm
home.
No, what are you talking about, Darren? It's the same as when Americans, Europeans come back to Europe, Britain, Scotland, like Donald Trump goes to Scotland and says, I'm Scottish, I'm home. It's exactly the same.
No one does that.
And yet, when Donald Trump does that and talks about his link to this country, you say, oh, it's a great thing.
I criticise
But when it's Meghan Markle,
will you let me actually
you say
speak,
no.
Albie?
Oh, she's being woke.
Joe Biden.
Diversity.
Oh, my God. Will you let me speak?
Hashtag DNI.
Joe Biden turned up in Ireland and declared he was home. And guess what? I criticised him then. He's an elderly white man, so how dare you try and make out that I'm somehow being some kind of bigot, as you just implied. You definitely trying to imply that. As you
said you're being silly.
You are a race baiter.
You're being silly. You're being silly.
What do you think, actually, Meghan Markle is once again trying to make something all about her?
Yeah, I mean, she's an attention seeker. I mean,
said she's a
everybody
warrior
knows.
princess.
Yeah, well, goodness sake.
A warrior princess.
Well, but, you know, look, there is a point of Americans not wanting to appear to be from the country that they're actually from. They all go, oh, I'm Irish, I'm Scottish, I'm this. They're never English, which, despite the fact that a vast majority of the immigrants who went to America were actually English, funnily enough. But, you know, there's two things that are striking to me. First of all, she's all of a sudden discovered this. Yeah. I mean, she could have spoken to her mother and maybe her grandmother.
That's how she found out.
Well, but she's just found out today. She just found out today, Albie. Come on. So she's making this statement today.
By the way, it's disputed that the Nigerian links are there. Well, yeah, Ghana. There's a whole. So it could be
the countries are very close to each other.
Trump would say, "Well, is the records? Like we need to see some evidence." But you know, this is typical Meghan. It's not about Harry ever, is it? Even though he's the actual person doing this royal tour for his Commonwealth Games of the Invictus Games, which he's been a big supporter of and started in the first place. So this should be about Harry going there and building those relationships, and Meghan's taken the story and made it all about herself.
Aren't they opening a Archwell building or branch in Nigeria?
And they're doing well. They're focusing massively at the minute on the Invictus Games, which I think is a really worthwhile cause.
Hang on, are they doing that Archwell branch in Nigeria? I've heard they are, which sounds very reminiscent of the Clintons going into Haiti. And I'm not going to get involved in it now, but
Royals opening a charity in Nigeria. How terrible!
Do you associate it with? It strikes me that it has all of the prerequisites of being a royal tour. right? They're turning up, they're opening these ventures. They were greeted by officials at the airport.
Sure.
It strikes me that they want to be royals without actually being royals in the working sense.
Well, I mean, she's just using her media pulling power, isn't she, to get a focus on it. I mean, this actually reminds me very much of that conversation about birth certificates proving whether you actually were the president of the US. Do you remember that with Obama? It's like, how can you possibly know anything about Meghan's genealogy apart from the only person that knows that is her and the people she's consulted about it?
Well, evidently not, given that it was only the other day that she found this out.
It wasn't.
Yeah, but it wasn't nearly the other day. She obviously has known elements of where she's from for years.
Not. She would have made absolutely everything.
I remember reading about it at the time. It wasn't the other day.
I don't agree with you, I'm afraid.
But do you understand what it means for the descendants of slaves to realise where they come from and then go to that place where they came from?
You could say that about absolutely everything.
No, I'm not speaking about. I'm asking about.
Romans enslaved
No, that's not the point.
Irish ancestry.
Darren, that's not the point.
Darren, say they were enslaved.
Darren, that's not the.
Well,
are you being deliberately obtuse?
300 years ago, do you know how it feels to have been?
Are you being deliberately obtuse?
No, I don't.
I think you are.
It's a silly argument.
It's not a silly argument. I'm asking if you understand or not, and you don't. So just say no.
Do I understand what it's like to be a slave?
No, I said that's not what I said. That isn't what I said. That isn't what I said.
But Darren, can you trace your surname back 500 years?
I can trace it back about
right.
that, yeah.
Right. So if you're descended from, if you were a slave and you were, kept by a slave owner, then your surname isn't your name, and you can never find out. Some people never find out. I have some good friends who are Nigerian, and that's the thing they talk to me about all the time. But they just don't know what their actual name is.
Can I ask? Because I don't know. Because I'm ignorant to it. Why would you care anyway?
Because it gives you a sense of place, purpose, knowing where you're coming from, identity. It's important.
All right. Still to come tonight, is Bank of England economist Hugh Pill right that immigration is causing the housing crisis? And should the Garrett Club have voted to allow female members? But next, as Natalie Elphicke defects to Labour, are Sir Keir Starmer's party becoming more and more like the Conservatives? You're with the Saturday 5, live on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Many of the people that you had invited to come and speak were people who've been elected in their own countries. I'm thinking of people like Suella Braverman. I'm thinking of Nigel Farage, who has been a member of the European Parliament, of course, had an enormous impact on British politics. And Viktor Orban, who has been elected and re-elected. Many people may not care for the Prime Minister of Hungary, but he's certainly an elected person.
And in addition, we had about 15 to 16 members of the European Parliament who were also elected, and they really live in Brussels. And you would imagine that Brussels, being the head of the capital of the EU, would allow elected members of its own parliament to have an opportunity to voice their views. So I think what was very interesting about this is that the mayors overplayed their hands, so that because they overplayed their hands, all public opinion became entirely on our side. It was so evident, so transparent, that this was really an attempt to use the police instead of arguments to react to our conference, that it was a real direct threat, and it is still a direct threat to the freedom of assembly and to free speech.
So how do you think it leaves it? Is it more likely or less likely that there'll be future bans?
I think this is a trial run. What I'm really worried about is that if the future of democracy and free speech depends on the ruling of one judge, and you have to remember that 3 other judges ruled against us, then democracy is in big trouble. What worries me absolutely is that a strong body of political opinion amongst established politicians believes that it is okay to cancel conferences and to crush the people's opinions and prevent the freedom of assembly. Democracy actually depends on these foundational values.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
On Mark Dolan tonight in a Mark Meet special, World Cup winning South African captain Francois Pienaar, the man who made history with Nelson Mandela, tells his incredible story. In my take at 10, why it's time for the King and the country to forgive Prince Harry, plus radio legend Mike Reid, the Hamiltons and Coronation Street star Charlie Lawson. We're live at 9.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for all of your emails and comments about tonight's topics. Dee has written in. Good evening, Dee. Hello, wonderful folks. It's only a Union Jack if it's on a ship. Otherwise, it's Union flag. Thank you.
My scout leader would be very angry. Did I say Union Jack instead of Union flag? Did. I'm so sorry.
Christine said, I cannot understand why persons who are not patriots of this country are allowed to use our platform to be entered into Eurovision. I quite agree. It's all politics anyway and a load of tosh, but I get really angry to hear that our entry belittles our flag. Yes, absolutely right. And it's the BBC all over. Jack says, oh, Darren, next time... Next time you're getting dressed, please keep your eyes open and the lights on. I thought it was Eurovision.
I didn't realise it was Prize.
Yeah.
Can you believe Darren mocks me for my fashion sense?
His pants don't fit him. Look at his... If we can zoom in on his... You can see his...
They're cropped.
Cropped? His budgie's died. Anyway, it's time now for our next debate. Who's going next?
Yep, I believe it's me. And are you a little bit confused? Because I definitely am. Because it seems to me like the Labour Party have gone a little bit far right. You know, that word that's flung around for anyone who has common sense policies. Well, recently we saw Natalie Elphicke, the Conservative, previously MP for Dover, cross the benches to join the Labour Party. Now, it's a little bit rich because a lot of the Labour activists, particularly in Dover, called Natalie a far-right MP for her views on immigration and everything else. But has the penny finally dropped for the Labour Party? Do they need to start winning those small C Conservatives who make up the vast majority of our great country? Well, I'll put it to the rest of the panel here. Do you think that the Labour Party is going far right? We've got, obviously, the big MI5, you know, immigration's going to be stopped by James Bond. Keir Starmer out in
Dover.
That's
MI6.
MI6, whatever. One of them.
Details.
One of the MIs.
You tried.
One of the MIs.
They have tried all that before, by the way.
They have. It's currently a policy, right? The Small Boats Command is currently a policy.
So they're just repeating policies that
Darren,
Sunak
I want to know if you're going to join the Labour Party.
Well, do you know, let's not forget that at one point the Labour Party had one of the Mosleys in it. I'm not comparing myself to the Mosleys, by the way, just to be clear. But, you know, they have had links to far-right members of public life and all the rest of it. But, no, I'm not going to join the Labour Party. They stand for net zero, they stand for open borders, mass migration.
Those are the Tories, so there's no difference.
Yes,
you're right. You're asking about the difference between Labour and the Tories. They are called the Uni Party for a reason. And pretty much there's a cigarette paper between them. And actually, on a very serious note, the defection of Natalie Elphicke, for me, is a really damning indictment of politicians these days. I've said for many weeks on this channel and months that I believe lots of our MPs are so low grade, they wouldn't get jobs in any half-decent corporate company in the real world. And I just don't understand how people like Natalie Elphicke can 1 minute claim to be a Conservative and then turn to be a socialist. I don't think you can change that.
Quite a right-wing
Albie, do you think the Conservative Party is full of valueless people now that just seem to decide whichever bench is going to be the next one in power and get a peerage every time they walk across the different green benches?
No, I don't think that at all.
Well, then do you agree with Penny Mordaunt that Keir Starmer's going to start endorsing people like Enoch Powell soon?
I don't understand that question. What do you mean?
Well, what do you think about? What do you think
Keir
about where
Starmer's going to
Labour's
endorse
moving into the Tory
Enoch
party
Powell?
territory? I mean, they're moving into traditional Conservative Party territory. Territory that the Tories
They just announced. A stop the boats policy, which is basically an amnesty for the 90,000 migrants that crossed the boats that crossed the channel since the the nationality and borders bill.
What Alex is talking about is multiple examples. For example, the use of the Union Jack again on all their election propaganda.
Union flag.
Apologies. The use of the Union Jack flag again to appear patriotic after years of people like Emily Thornberry, pretty much calling anyone who flew the St George's flag a racist. You had Wes Streeting today doing an interview with The Sun saying, unbelievably, that he was somehow anti-woke. By the way, Wes Streeting, the guy who worked at Stonewall, supported Black Lives Matter, said trans women are women.
Now, Susan Hall was voted for by racists and fascists.
And Islamophobes, let's not forget.
But Nikki, this is all temporary. This is all tactics. It's literally just to get them through the door so that they're the leading party, and then everything will start to migrate. That's all that's going to happen. And the other thing about Natalie Elphicke is she's a career politician. If you, and actually, even if you're a very honourable politician, what you like doing is working on, cross-parliamentary groups and thinking about what laws you can push through for your constituents. That doesn't actually change that much if you're on the other side.
Yeah.
But Nikki,
would you agree, Nikki, that you should put... I mean, if I was in power, if I was in politics, I would say to anyone who crosses the benches, you won't be allowed to stand again, and you won't be allowed to get a peerage or any cash or anything.
Completely ridiculous. Because if they're a good MP, it doesn't really matter which party they sit in. We need them for democracy.
But do you not think that parties should have people of values? Because I think that we've got countries that are being... we're being run now by a bunch of corporatists
What's
who
wrong
just
with
want to keep their
changing your
job.
mind in this life? Actually, it's the sign of being smart. It's thinking, actually, maybe I don't want to do this way. I'm going to do this instead.
But do you think... I just can't see how she's woken up one day and all of a sudden had said all these things about the Labour Party. It's called Keir Starmer, was it? Soft lovey, it's snoring Starmer. And now she's all of a sudden endorsing him as the next Prime Minister. I just can't get my head around that.
Look, you've always got backbenchers in any party that absolutely despise the current leader and don't agree with half of the policies and things that are being put forward. But they are whipped into their position. They're told to vote in certain ways. That is just part of being an MP.
You don't turn from being a Conservative into a Socialist. Being a Conservative, for me...
But Keir Starmer's not a socialist.
He's not
a socialist, is he?
Please. Well, being a Conservative, for me, isn't just some on-the-surface political thing. It's a deep value which is inherited in your very being. It's affected by your childhood, your upbringing, your surroundings and your present-day circumstance. You can't just turn from a Conservative to a Socialist. For me, she's an absolute mercenary, and she's the worst example of
I'll
MPs.
tell you what, it does call into question the whole premise of the House of Lords. I think it's a cronyist, horrible second chamber that is corrupt.
It really
is being used in order to advance political
Well, it's clear. We're hearing a lot of rumours about these MPs who are leaving the Conservative Party, going to Labour, all of a sudden waking up with a conscience to say, the Tory MP recently, who was a doctor, right? And he said, now the Tories are doing terribly on the NHS despite being a Tory MP for the last decade.
Just to ask Nikki something very quickly. Do you feel comfortable with the direction Labour's going in? Because you had David Lammy a few days ago in the United States of America talking at a conference about how he was a good Christian boy, a small C Conservative, and shared some views with Donald Trump. You have Natalie Elphicke moving over from the Conservative Party to the Labour Party. You have the Labour Party going back on all of their policy ideas of nationalising things and EU-free movement of people. Are you worried about the direction of the Labour Party?
No, because I still think it's only temporary until they hopefully win the election.
So basically, you admit, Nikki, they're a bunch of frauds.
No, I think it's what all politicians do always. They're tactical about how they get the public to vote for them. No, but Labour isn't the problem here. The problem is with people like Natalie Elphicke. That's the point, these so-called defectors.
But Keir Starmer accepted her. Is that not a problem?
No, because she's probably got loads of experience and he thinks tactically... No, just listen to me. He thinks tactically that she will be able to give him, get him into the mindset of the right. And if you work for a liberal organisation, you always want right-wing people in it.
You know what? I don't think you're wrong at all, Nikki, but I say it's more damning on the Conservative Party that their own MPs... This is meant to be the party of strong law and order on immigration, on the economy, and there's clearly no one voting for them. So where is the strong leadership from Rishi Sunak on these issues? Because it seems to me that the electorate who would be voting for him aren't showing up to vote for Rishi Sunak, and then they're obviously not inspired by his leadership. What would you say about that, Albie?
I don't know if we have time to come back on it, but Rishi Sunak's plan is working. The economy is back growing. taxes have been cut and immigration will come down. We'll see what happens at the election.
Okie doke. Still ahead, folks. Is it all over for the days of men-only spaces as the Garrick Club voted to allow female members? Next of all, though, are high levels of immigration fueling Britain's housing crisis? Because that was the view of the Bank of England's chief economist. Ben Leo has some thoughts. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tonight, most of us it should be dry, and that gives us another opportunity to see the northern lights. So at the moment we have got high pressure clinging on, but that will move towards the continent as we go through the next few days, heralding a change to the weather. But before we get there, plenty of clear skies tonight away from the eastern seaboard. So yeah, an excellent opportunity to see the northern lights, especially across more northern parts of the country. And despite the clear skies, it's going to be a mild night for most of us. Temperatures in towns and cities firmly in double figures. So for most of us, a bright start on Sunday morning. Quite murky across some northern and eastern areas, but the low cloud will gradually burn its way back towards the North Sea. Showers breaking out fairly early on across parts of Northern Ireland, and then as the day goes on, parts of Scotland, Wales, England, down towards the very far southwest, seeing a few thunderstorms developing. Some of these will be torrential. Warnings are in force as we go through the course of Sunday. In the sunshine, though, temperatures reaching 27 degrees. But then on to Monday, another band of rain moves in from the southwest. It takes a fair time to get anywhere further north than Wales in the southwest. So for the rest of us, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. That sets us up for a fairly changeable middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to something a little bit near normal for the time of year.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise
and who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for all of your interactions on your say. On the Meghan Markle ancestry discussion, Karen says, at some point we have all been slaves. It did not start with the black slave trade, nor has it ended with the black slave trade. It still exists now. Now, Celia is not optimistic about a possible Sir Keir Starmer government. She says, once he is in, he will give an amnesty and take EU quotas. Yeah, that's what they're saying. He is part of the liberal elite and a globalist. Wait and see. Yeah, cheery stuff. Now that... like my shirt. Now it's time for our next debate. Who's going next?
I think it's me, Joseph, and the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
That's good.
I've been waiting to get that one.
Oh, that's very good.
OK, you can imagine my joy this week when finally the guys at the Bank of England finally admitted what we've all known for many, many years, which was that mass migration, uncontrolled mass migration, the figures in the UK in 2022, for example, 730-odd thousand, is fueling our housing crisis. Who'd have thought? It doesn't take a genius to work it out. A report also showed that 89% of our recent increase in the housing waiting list, I think it's like 1.5 million, comes from new migrants who have just entered the country in recent years. So, Albie, why is it a surprise to people at the Bank of England who are meant to be, you know, clued up and experts and all this kind of thing? Why have they only just realised now and admitted that it's our mass uncontrolled migration that's causing our housing crisis?
I think it's probably something people have been saying for a long time, maybe within different institutions, but they've not actually publicly wanted to go out and say it.
Coward.
Because it's felt... It almost feels like a taboo subject, or it has felt like a taboo subject to talk about immigration. Quite often you get people saying that it was a racist topic to talk about wanting less migration. Now, you would get other people... for example, there's a chap called Harrison from the IEA who is very pro-immigration and pro-house building. And the Institute for Economic Affairs, for those of you that don't know, wonderful institution. And he would argue that actually the reason why we haven't been able to build enough houses to keep up with the demand of new migrants coming to the country is because of our very burdensome planning regulations. So I think there's two parts of this. Immigration is too high and our planning regulations are too restrictive, which means we can never build houses in line with demand.
I get that, and I agree. We're not doing enough to build houses. So knowing that fact, knowing we're not building enough schools, houses, there isn't enough doctors and hospital spaces.
Prison places.
Prison places. Why are we then allowing so many people to come in?
It was a very bad idea.
And also, by the way, Nikki, your ilk, the left, Gen Zers particularly, they make me laugh. They make me howl because one day they're sitting there saying, I can't get a flat, the rents are out of control, I can't buy a house, I can't start a family because I haven't got a house. And the next day they're all campaigning for open borders and they just don't seem to get it in their heads that one equals the other.
Well, no, because the majority of migrants end up in rented accommodation, a very poor quality accommodation. They're not taking the nice houses that, you know, people buy to get on the housing ladder.
They are.
Not the majority of them, not the majority.
You should see some of the accommodation they're given. They're given new build developments.
But that's different. But that's different. I'm not talking about social housing. I'm talking about the houses that people want to buy, right? The desirable houses, you know, a price point that people can afford to actually purchase. I mean, I think what's important to consider is that you said cause, I think, but actually they said fuel. So there's a bit of a difference between migrants adding to the problem and migrants starting the problem.
Well, that's my point to Albie. We know there's a problem because we're not building enough houses. Fine, that's one issue. So then why would you keep allowing people to come in? A city the size of Birmingham every 2 years, where's the sense?
Well, because the issue is what we should be allowing people to do is to work and to pay taxes and to feed into the economy, and then we will be able to afford to build more social housing.
But the problem is,
and help people get on the housing ladder themselves.
They're not working.
Yeah, but that's our system that's broken. That's our system that's broken. We should let migrants work. I believe that we should let migrants in this country work.
They don't want to work. They're all claiming benefits.
What a load of rubbish. I bet
you're talking about small boat migrants here.
Well,
as illegal migrants to work.
I'm talking about
but of course there are the economic migrants that come over on work visas. Of course they work.
We know, Darren. We know that the myth that migrants fuel the economy is exactly that. It's a myth. The latest GDP figures, before the ones that were released this week, showed that GDP per capita, which is the truest form of a person's quality of life in the UK, contracted by 0.7%.
Yeah, that's right.
Despite immigration figures skyrocketing.
In the report you mentioned by Robert Jenrick, it also points out that the kind of migration that's coming here now is entirely unproductive compared to the population already here. So that would suggest that we are there for...
What's quite interesting about that, though, Darren, as a Brexiteer, I wonder what your view would be on this, is that the immigration that we've had since Brexit has been mostly from non-European countries, and the migrants, on average, are less productive. But when we were in the European Union and people were coming from Europe because of free movement of people, the migrants were very productive. So how do you feel having supported a movement which has caused the problems with migration that we have today?
Look, I don't think Brexit has caused that. I think politicians have allowed that to happen. We need to build new homes every 5 minutes, night and day, in order to keep up with the demand that's already needed. Never mind bringing more people into the country, because it's going to be a crisis that we never solve in Britain. But I don't think it's Brexit's fault. I think it's the politicians who we give the power and control to who have said, all right, Australian points-based system, which apparently means every bugger gets to come.
But it's also issues. It's also issues like expats buying houses. It's people buying houses in small communities where locals should be able to have them, like Cornwall, for example. You know, people just being priced out of their homes, and it's things like the Green Belt. You know, there's a lot of very rich people sitting on a lot of land in this country with, they give no access to it to anyone else.
I voted Greens in the locals because they're pledging to stop a really horrible Toy Town development.
You voted for the Green Party.
But can we just pick up on this Brexit point really quickly?
That's right there for you.
He has just voted for a party, which is the nasty party of Britain. That's what they are.
You know, look, on the Brexit point, by the way, I think British people are also forward-looking. We know there's going to be an amnesty for all these hundreds of thousands of migrants crossing over to Europe. We know there's going to be an amnesty, so those people will get European citizenships, and then they will still come to Britain anyway. It's still more difficult for them to do that today. On the second point, on house builders, a lot of these big house building corporations actually have plots and plots of land across this country which they are refusing to build on. And why are they doing it? Because they're pushing up the values of the properties and these big buildings that they're creating. So there needs to be massive planning reform from the government. The Tories really should be getting on top of this.
And to answer your question or point, Nikki, do you know why people reject NIMBYs that exist?
Yeah.
Because the Toy Town estates that they build, these horrible new build estates, every house looks the same, it's vile.
People have got to live somewhere,
So what? People have got to live somewhere. We've got a crisis in our house. But you can't make a decision about what brickwork you want to look at in the morning over the road.
Characterful homes.
All right, okie doke. Still ahead, though, later tonight, Nikki Hodgson goes head-to-head with Ben Leo in the Saturday Scrap. There's a little preview for you. Should crying babies be booted out of restaurants? Let me know what you think. gbnews.com/your say. And the Garrett Club has voted to admit female members. Has the idea of men-only spaces had its day? You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, a woman who 25 years ago, at the age of just 14, tortured and killed her 71-year-old grandmother was last month released from prison on licence.
But this isn't the first time she's been let out. Sarah Davey has been bailed and reincarcerated no less than 7 times.
Well, to debate this, we're joined by former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton, famed for catching the notorious killer of Millie Dowler, Levi Belfield, and GB News' own Patrick Christie's.
I think we have to qualify that where the killer is a child, and we have to accept that to consign somebody to be in prison for 60, 70 or 80 years is probably something that we ought to think twice about. So I understand why this happens. I understand the outrage. I really understand the outrage. I think that 14-year-olds who kill should be given a chance to rehabilitate? Yes, I do. Do I think that somebody who's had 7 such chances and blown them away deserves an 8th chance? Then probably I think that's a lot more doubtful.
I would have thought that by chance, sort of 3 or 4, they'd have got the picture, but clearly not. Patrick, what do you make of it all?
Well, some people are born evil, aren't they? And why should we have to suffer to have them back out on the streets? There are some crimes that are so serious that you should pay for it either with your life or for the rest of your life. This was a sadistic murder, the details of which absolutely cannot be read out on air at this particular time of day. There are 3 issues here. Is this justice for the families of victims? I just think a release like this is a slap in the face, really, to us all. It's another example of soft justice. And just because she's a child, well, she was old enough to commit the heinous crime she committed.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel. Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. Your comments are flying in as ever. Chris says, so we need an expert to tell us immigration affects the housing market. Maybe we should also get the expert to explain that 2 + 2 = 4. Jaman says, did the Sussexes take their children with them on holiday? Sorry, humanitarian jolly, seeing how often they leave them, the children will have to look up their own DNA.
That's brilliant. Very good. That's very good. Very good.
I appreciate that. Well done. Yeah. Now it's time for our next debate. Who's going to wrap us up?
It's me. No pressure. Well, very excitingly, the Garrick Club in London has finally voted to allow women to become members. It's 200 years old and it's taken them a while to catch up. But only 60% of them voted to allow women in. So that's 40% of the men that still don't get it. Equality, I know, it's really terrifying, isn't it? Women are allowed to do everything now, including have a drink next to you in the bar that you sometimes go to with your male mates. Why do they care so much? It's very odd to me that they want to hold on to this bastion of male dominance and power, because what are they actually hiding in there? That's what I want to know anyway. So, yeah, I mean, is it too little too late, though? Because actually there still are lots of bastions of power which are all male at the minute, and maybe it's just not going to work.
I think if I was a Garrick member, I might have voted against the change.
Why?
I would have.
Because why can't men have men-only spaces in the same way that women have women-only
A safe space.
And
we need a safe space.
There is a women's old club, an old ladies' club, if you will. Like, that wasn't
What's
quite
it called?
right. The University Women's Club.
Bingo.
It was founded in, I believe, in the 1800s, around the same time that the Garrick was founded. A lot of these gentlemen's clubs was founded. Ladies' clubs were also founded. Do you think that the University Women's Club should have a vote to admit men?
Probably. And actually...
Really? Do you really think that?
While we're on that point, the whole reason women's clubs had to evolve or, you know, come into being was because they were not allowed to go to those places. Remember, women weren't allowed to have degrees at that point. They weren't allowed to get, you know, honours degrees at that point.
But women can go in, they just can't be members.
So, Nikki,
or couldn't be members.
I've got a very important question. So, in some mosques, women aren't allowed. Are you going to petition mosque...
That's different. We're talking about spaces where business and networking is done. We're not talking about places of religious practice.
Why is a mosque exempt?
Because actually synagogues are exempt in some areas.
Why?
Because
you can't have it both ways. You can't demand to infiltrate men's private spaces and yet leave Islam alone and say that that's fine that they...
You're confusing two issues. We're talking about business spaces where people get to network, hold on to their money. No, but they get to hold on to their money, they get to do private deals that never see the light of day, that women are never privy to.
It's a bar.
Do you know what, though? There is so many exceptional women in this country, and Dame Judi Dench is the one who's going to be joining first, I believe, right?
Love her.
Why can't women get together and create an exceptional club?
Well, they do. There are women's clubs. But it's not about that. You've got to remember that men still hold the majority of the wealth in the world. You know, we've got 21 companies where women are the CEOs, and that's it in this country. You know, FTSE 100 CEOs. You still have to understand that so much power, wealth, privilege is sacked in the favour of men, and we need to do everything we can to break that down.
But even the Garrick Club itself is really hard for men to get into. So now what we're doing is dividing the amount of members that can join. So what you're doing is suppressing the amount of also men.
Alex, that is absolutely ridiculous. That's saying because there might be some good women in the world, we've got to kind of keep them away because there might not be good enough men.
It's absolutely fine for them to have
just very quickly.
Men. Hang on, let's just get this point across. White British boys, young men, are the most oppressed in our country.
That's not true.
They absolutely are. Absolutely are.
Why do women get
paid? They have the hardest trouble getting jobs. There's no positive discrimination for them. And now we're saying let's take another thing away from them.
Why do women get the best degrees but do not earn the most in business and are not hired to the best roles? Why? It's prejudice. It's simply that.
I'm not taking...
perpetuate it.
Is this called the Garrett Club really the cornerstone issue in feminism in 2024?
It's not the cornerstone issue. No, nobody's saying that. They're just saying
You kind of said that.
I'm just saying it's very important to fight for because all the problems we have as women can be
It's
seen
because of the
through-
Garrett Club.
They can be seen through the prism of what's happened at the Garrett.
Why don't you politely? Why don't you stop blaming other people for your problems?
Oh my goodness, why don't we stop blaming men for the oppression of women? I don't know, all the statistics about like rape and sexual violence and, you know, like how women don't own their own bank accounts.
This is
and
really
how women
serious
do all the
stuff.
childcare.
But
That's
nothing
not
to do
women
with the
oppressing
Garrett.
themselves, that's men
Hang on.
being fair.
Let's just take a step back. How are we getting to rape and oppression from saying, I would just quite like to go to the Garrett Club and have a drink?
Because it's about power, and rape and oppression and getting a good business deal are all about power. It's all about the same thing underneath. Women don't have the power that men do.
I just think there was nothing wrong with it. Women could go in
and not do business deals and get privy to the best conversations and all the rest of it.
business deals. Do a business deal?
Because, well, for a start, they're told they can only go in certain areas within the Garrett. That's the other thing. So you can't go everywhere. Obviously not the loose.
Nikki, why can't you go and do your own business deals with your own...
Because we want to do it with the most powerful people, and they are men at the minute in this country because of how it's stacked
You don't
against
get
us.
to the point of sharing equality when you actually start putting in positive discrimination. You actually get inequality.
Positive discrimination, that's not what it is.
Well,
This
it
is
is.
just
It is
basic
because
fairness.
you can say that, but if an institution is set up directly to support men, would you say the same thing about women's institutions and that they should also support men as well?
There's a key difference, and the difference is that women have been so oppressed and unable to access power and wealth and business deals for so
Don't you
long.
think that
They
should
need to be
happen
able to
naturally?
catch up.
Don't you think that? But that's a natural thing. But it has been.
Equality does
been
not
happening
happen
naturally for the
naturally. It
last 20
happens when you
years.
fight for it.
So the key difference between the arguments here is, Nikki, you believe you're a victim, and
No,
yes,
I
you
don't believe I'm a victim at all.
You've displayed
no,
that throughout this
I
entire
didn't use that
conversation.
word, and I didn't say that
You
myself.
say-
I didn't even bring myself into it, Ben. You
You said
just
you're
popped
oppressed.
that out on
You
me.
said women are oppressed.
I didn't say that either.
You did.
Say that.
You said women
I didn't say I was oppressed.
Yeah. No,
Women as a sex are oppressed.
So the difference is you consider women oppressed and victims of men and society.
No,
and
that's
we
different.
Don't.
No.
Don't say we.
No, you don't believe.
Look, I am.
We know Albie's going to disagree.
I am.
Obviously accept that there's
I'm a
sexism
feminist
in this country, right?
Of course there's sexism in this country.
There's racism, there's
there
homophobia,
is.
there's everything.
Yeah, there is.
Victimhood has got nothing to do with it, and that's what's put women's role when they fight for
You don't get
rights.
to real equality when you put in policies that actually do discriminate against men.
It's not discriminating against men. Men can still join.
Well, no, of course that's true, but you're actually going to limit the amount of men that can join now.
You have to be good enough. You have to be good enough, Alex, and your gender doesn't matter if you now allow women in.
That's not my point. My main point was women are more than capable of setting up great clubs, and I think men should also be entitled to have their own spaces too.
I'm off to join the Women's Institute.
That's a lovely blouse you're wearing, Darren.
Still to come on the show tonight, Miriam Cates MP will join us to discuss her upcoming debate this week on the impact of smartphones and social media when it comes to children. What's your view? And we'll be going live to Malmo in Sweden for all the latest as the countdown to Eurovision starts. Don't go anywhere.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tonight, most of us it should be dry, and that gives us another opportunity to see the northern lights. So at the moment we have got high pressure clinging on, but that will move towards the continent as we go through the next few days, heralding a change to the weather. But before we get there, plenty of clear skies tonight away from the eastern seaboard. So yeah, an excellent opportunity to see the northern lights, especially across more northern parts of the country. And despite the clear skies, it's going to be a mild night for most of us. Temperatures in towns and cities firmly in double figures. So for most of us, a bright start on Sunday morning. Quite murky across some northern and eastern areas, but the low cloud will gradually burn its way back towards the North Sea. Showers breaking out fairly early on across parts of Northern Ireland, and then as the day goes on, parts of Scotland, Wales, England, down towards the very far south, we're seeing a few thunderstorms developing. Some of these will be torrential. Warnings are in force as we go through the course of Sunday. In the sunshine, though, temperatures reaching 27 degrees. But then on to Monday, another band of rain moves in from the southwest. It takes a fair time to get anywhere further north than Wales and the southwest. So for the rest of us, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. That sets us up for a fairly changeable middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to something a little bit near normal for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Today is a good day for the King, a good day for Britain. I'm sure you'll be hoping that those Not My King morons decide to give it a rest for a little while, because he is still dealing with an illness, isn't he?
He's still dealing with an illness, and he appears to be dealing extremely well. I think he comes from the fact that he's extremely strong and fit. I think I understand that will help his treatment enormously. And I think, as your professor was saying, it's the fatigue that can be a brutal thing when you're trying to lead a normal life with cancer. But I think that it's going to really help him psychologically to get out there, and people are going to be giving him enormous support. I mean, I know, as you say, there's an anti-monarchy brigade, but there's been an anti-monarchy brigade since there's been a monarchy. So that is not such a big deal. It has always been there. I feel that Charles is going to get a lot of support from the sort of joyousness of people seeing him and, wishing him well. And I think that that's going to be immensely important to him. It's a very busy time, but I think a boost for William and Kate. William's out and about. We don't know about Kate, but I feel that the King will definitely... It's a very busy time coming up with the anniversary of D-Day in Normandy, which I know he will be desperate to be a part of. Then there's the big royal season, the Trooping the Colour, the Garter ceremony, Royal Ascot, and then he is hosting the Emperor and Empress of Japan at the end of June. So it's an absolutely packed month for someone that is presumably going to get very tired.
Yes, indeed. I mean, if he gets through all of that, I think that will be absolutely massive, won't it?
It's Saturday night, and this is the Saturday Five. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albie Amancona, Nikki Hodgson, Ben Leo and Alex Armstrong. We've got loads more coming tonight, including our big interview with Miriam Cates MP. She's leading a debate in Parliament this week, which will discuss the impact of smartphones and social media on children. Where are you at on that? Should we ban smartphones for children? It's 7 p.m, and this is the Saturday Five. Now, we'll also be crossing live to Malmo to get the latest news on tonight's Eurovision Song Contest. And Nikki Hodgson and Ben Leo will go head-to-head in our Saturday scrap. Are crying babies in restaurants all part of the rich tapestry of life, or a plague on humanity? Strong words by Ben Leo, the Green Party MP. And then we'll be answering your questions in Ask the Five. If you send them through to gbnews.com/your say, we'll get to them. Nothing is off limits unless it's not Ofcom compliant. First of all, though, it's your Saturday Night News with Aaron.
Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. United by music. That's Eurovision's motto, but the build-up to tonight's final has been anything but, amid incidents inside the arena and protests outside. The Netherlands entry, Joost Klein's been disqualified. The Dutch broadcaster says it was over a threatening movement he made towards someone who was filming him, reportedly against his wishes. Ireland's entrant, Bambi Thug, missed dress rehearsals over what they have described as an incident which needed urgent attention from the European Broadcast Union. And the French act, Slimane, has broken Eurovision rules on making political statements during the warm-ups with an on-stage speech calling for peace. Well, tonight's final takes place against the backdrop of huge pro-Palestinian demonstrations in the city of Malmo. They're protesting against Israel's participation in the contest. They have been marching through the city centre and are currently gathering outside the venue. The Israeli army has ordered a new evacuation orders for various parts of the Gaza Strip as it expands its military operation. More neighbourhoods in Rafah have been told to move to so-called humanitarian areas in the west. Around 300,000 Palestinians have already left Rafah. But Israeli forces have also told residents in northern Gaza to evacuate, prompting fears of an assault on two fronts. The UK and its allies have warned Israel against carrying out a military offensive in Rafah. A 17-year-old boy has died after getting into trouble while swimming in the town of Wellingborough. Ronald's Abele was recovered by rescue crews yesterday after reports he got into difficulty in open water at the embankment. Northamptonshire police say it was a tragic accident and Ronald's family have requested privacy at this very distressing time. A police officer has been shot in the leg with a crossbow in Buckinghamshire. The officer was responding to reports of a stabbing in High Wycombe last night. He was hospitalised but has since been released. A 54-year-old man's been arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. He was shot by an armed officer and is now in hospital under police supervision. He has potentially life-changing injuries. Authorities in Ibiza and Mallorca have issued a new booze ban in an effort to crack down on what they call excessive tourism. The sale of alcohol in shops and off licences will be banned from 9:30 in the evening until 8 a.m. in popular hotspots like Magaluf, Playa de Palma and San Antoni. There will also be further restrictions on party boats in an attempt to curb antisocial behaviour and booze-fuelled holidays. It follows complaints from local people. And those who break the law could be fined up to £1,300. And if you've been suffering a bout of regret from missing a rare display of the Northern Lights last night, well, fear not. There's another opportunity later. Aurora Borealis will be visible in the skies across the UK. It may not be quite as pronounced, though, as it was yesterday. But if you are staying up, any time after 10:30 will be best. And you can sign up to the latest GB News alerts for more on all of our stories or go to our website for more details. Now, back to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. I thank you very much for doing so. I'm Darren Grimes and I can promise that you're in for yet another very lively hour. We're going to crack on with tonight's big interview. Now, this Tuesday in Parliament, there'll be a very important debate which will consider the impact of smartphones and social media on children. Now, most secondary school children now own smartphones, but there's growing concern that this can have a negative impact with anxiety, bullying, self-harm and suicide all on the rise among young people. So what can be done about it? Well, someone that's leading the debate will be the Conservative MP for Penistone and Stocksbridge, Miriam Cates, and she joins us now to tell us more. Good evening, Miriam. Thank you very much for your company. Now, Miriam, why are you so passionate about this in particular and the issue of smartphones with young people? Just how pivotal is this on the really detrimental things that are happening to this generation?
Well, good evening, all of you, and thanks for having me on. I'm passionate about it because I'm passionate about children, and I think partly that's because I'm a mum and I'm a former teacher. But also, I think as a politician, we have to realise that children are our future. And if we're not bringing up our children well, if our children aren't happy, if our children aren't learning, then really we don't have a future at all. And I think if we look at our children today and our teenagers, we can see that childhood has changed enormously just from when we were young, and I think I'm older than all of you, but from when I was young, and certainly from when our parents and grandparents were young. And I don't think it's necessarily changed for the better. I think in many ways it's changed for the worse. And one of the reasons that it's changed for the worse in recent times, in the last 15 years, has been the kind of ubiquitous nature of smartphones now for children. And you mentioned that the vast majority of teens, I think 97% of 12-year-olds have their own phones. Even a fifth of 3- and 4-year-olds in this country have their own phones. And of course, there are great things about the internet. I wouldn't be speaking to you now if it wasn't for the internet. All sorts of things have changed for the better because of the internet. But the internet is not the same as a child having constant access to social media in their pocket. And of course, we're not just talking about the kind of funny side of social media, the cat pictures, the funny memes. We're talking about the kind of serious harms that we would never, ever allow our children to encounter in real life. Would you let your child walk down a street if they could see a beheading, if they could see a violent rape? Would you let them walk down the street if thousands of people were going to jump out of a shop and tell them to kill themselves? We just would never, ever tolerate these kind of harms in real life. And yet our children have free access to them online. And if you look at the stats, whether you look at suicide amongst young people, self-harm, depression, anxiety, porn addiction, being sexually abused online, all of these things have gone up quite significantly since the start of children having smartphones. So I think enough is enough. We've got to rescue childhood, and I hope that the debate on Tuesday starts to get politicians thinking about that.
Just one more from me, but I wonder, Miriam, what do you say to those who would say, well, hang on a minute, it's all well and good saying this, it sounds laudable stuff, but we also ban children from using vapes. They still use them. We also ban children from drinking alcohol. Some of them still drink alcohol. We ban children from doing so many things that are bad for them that still manage to actually access these things that are banned in law. How can you actually go about with a wholesale ban on smartphone use by people who may well be able to access them elsewhere?
No ban is ever 100% effective. That's absolutely true. You have to be 18 to buy alcohol in this country. But of course, we know that some teens do get hold of it earlier. And I think we've got to be realistic. No ban will ever be 100% effective. But imagine if we didn't have a ban on the sale of alcohol, and teenagers and children, as they used to be able to do actually in the 19th century, could get hold of alcohol and get drunk and become alcoholics. Imagine the impact that that would have on childhood. Now, of course, not every child is prevented from buying alcohol, but I don't think there's many people in the country that would want to go back to a time where we didn't have that ban on sale on alcohol. And I think it's exactly the same with raising the age for social media or raising the age to have a smartphone. Of course, there will be some children who still get hold of them, who still manage to get on these sites. But firstly, I think we should be prosecuting the tech companies for allowing that. They are some of the biggest, most rich, vested interests the world has ever seen. We'd clamp down hard on any off-license that was selling alcohol to 12-year-olds. We should be doing the same with tech companies. But also we have this collective action problem now, because nearly all of our teens are on phones. Many of them are addicted to social media, to gaming, to porn. It's actually affecting the whole cohort of children. So if we can get most of them away from this material, most of them back to kind of real world play and relationships, then that should have a positive effect on all of childhood, even if there are some children who slip through the net.
Okie doke.
Hi, Miriam. Great to have you on the show. I just wanted to get your thoughts on this, because you've been quite critical of the government on their immigration policy, on their policies towards children and childcare, on their policies towards Stop the Boats. So was Natalie Elphicke. If you were going to defect, would you defect to Reform or to Labour?
I would never defect to either of them. And, you know, I am a Conservative to my core. And yes, of course, I have disagreements with my own party, and I've spoken out on some of these issues. But you know, perhaps it's just my own perception. But personally, I think I have the Conservative point of view on these positions, on family, on culture, and those kind of things. And, you know, the Conservative Party is a very broad church. And personally, I think it's too broad a church. And that has actually stopped us from implementing some of the legislation and some of the changes that we should have been able to do. But I am absolutely a Conservative to my core.
But you and Natalie, I would have thought, are similar kinds of Conservatives. You know, you're not on the opposite side of the Conservative Party to Natalie Elphicke. Actually, many people would probably think you and Natalie Elphicke have quite similar opinions. How can someone like that join the Labour Party?
is a very good question, and I honestly don't know the answer to it. And when I did see that she had defected, my first thought was, is it to reform? So I was as surprised as anybody, and you know, who knows what's gone on and why. But I think what is very interesting is that the Labour Party have accepted her, and of course we know that the parties, as I've said, are a broad church, but there has to be a limit to that. What is the point of the Labour Party if they have someone with deeply held conservative views like Natalie Elphicke, who, as you said, I agree with on a lot of things, and somebody like Richard Bergen? What is the point of a party that encompasses such a broad range of political views? What is their guiding principle? Do they have a coherent philosophy? That's what I would be asking right now if I was a Labour member. So yes, I don't know why Natalie did it, but I think that there are bigger questions for the Labour Party.
All right, OK. I want to. There was two parents on the panel. Have either of you got a point on the use of... Do you think it's viable and worthy to ban smartphones?
I don't think it is necessarily, but what I'm interested in is how we're going to keep our children on top of technology if we take it away from them. How are they going to be competitive with other people in the global market if they haven't had the same access?
OK. Yes, Miriam, how do you think we'll get around that one?
I don't think we should be stopping children using the internet, and I completely agree. In order to be skilled up, ready for work, of course they need to be able to use computers, they need to be able to find their way around the internet. Many of them will need to be able to program and use all sorts of digital technology. But the difference between using a laptop, let's say, or a PC in a family room, or a computer at school, and having the internet in your pocket is absolutely enormous. And I think one of the reasons is that social media itself doesn't have any benefits for children. I mean, there's just no evidence that it benefits children, and many, many pieces of evidence that it harms them. And one of the reasons for that is it's designed for addiction. So we all know what it's like. We're thinking about something, we're trying to write a piece of, trying to write an article, trying to concentrate on work. And all the time in our mind, we're thinking, oh, have I got a WhatsApp notification? And even if you're not giving in to temptation to look at it, your brain is consumed with thinking about it. And that is happening to our children, but 1,000 times worse because their brains are not mature. And I think the average child gets 237 notifications a day. That's a dopamine hit every 4 minutes that's distracting them from schoolwork. And if you look at the international education scores, the PISA scores that are used to compare attainment across the countries, they have all gone down since 2014, whether it's reading, maths and science. It's not COVID. COVID was a blip, but it started to go down when children started to get smartphones. It's not the internet. It's the fact that they've got it in their pocket. It's an addiction factor. And I think Policy Exchange brought out a report just last week. The schools that have effective mobile phone bans have GCSE grades 1 to 2 grades higher than the schools that don't. That's the impact of the smartphone, which I think is the problem. Using the internet and getting digital skills is not the problem. It's the smartphone that poses the difficulty.
All right, Miriam Cates, MP, thank you very much for your time as ever. Have a good evening. Now, Nikki, I want to come to you because on that point of that Miriam was arguing there about Natalie Elphicke and bringing her into the party and it being too broad a church, do you think there's merit actually to having some? You said earlier, right? Just explain that point, expand on that point.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is merit to having somebody who doesn't traditionally believe what everybody else you work with believes, because they can think about things that you've never anticipated. And, I think about this in terms of, warmongering. When people want to fight another country, they often take hostage someone from that country, right, to give them intel and information. And I don't think politics is any different.
It's really just the whole thing's quite interesting. I do think it's a bit of a fool's pursuit, if I'm being honest. One, parents shove iPads in front of kids at 3 years old. I see it at dinner tables and restaurants all the time now, so I don't think parents will be too happy about it. And frankly, this is more big state nonsense from the Tories. I really applaud her efforts. I really applaud that she's trying to do something to help children. But it does go down. No, it's the parents' responsibility to stop their kids from having mobile phones. Kids can't afford to pay £500 for an iPhone, and that's what they've all got. They've all got iPhones. Who's paying for it?
But doesn't the state need to protect children against bad parents? Like, there are many regulations and laws that are in place.
But if we're talking about banning it for everybody, Albie, you're going to punish the kids that do have good parents.
Smoking is banned for all children. Alcohol is banned for all children. We're saying the whole country's full of bad parents. I don't think so.
I want to hear what a parent, Ben Leo, has to say on this.
Yeah, I think as a parent, and I think Nikki will agree with me on this, you have a unique perspective, and I really think kids having access to smartphones at such a young and vulnerable age is one of the biggest threats to this country and actually the West and the entire world, because it affects so many things. We heard from Miriam Cates there talking about education, concentration. It's going to affect the schoolwork. That, for me, that's just one slither of a very vast branch of negative things. I'm a father of 2 young boys. I'm terrified of them growing up very, very quickly, very soon in the coming years, and having access to all sorts of horrible, vile, hardcore porn. You've got young girls whose first experience of sex is graphic, hardcore. You know, I don't want to go into it.
Good parents like you can stop that. Bad parents will buy them anyway, mate.
Right, we're going to have to leave that there. But I tell you what, if Miriam Cates had said she's defecting to the Labour Party, it wouldn't have been quite as shocking as him to defect into the Green Party. Right, still to come tonight, we're going to be asking if AI dating is the way forward in the Bunch of Five, and Nikki and Ben will go head-to-head in the Saturday Scrap. But next, the Eurovision Song Contest has very much been in the news this week. We're going live to Malmo to get all the latest. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is, tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim. To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, thank you very much for all of your comments about tonight's topics. Regarding our discussion on the housing market earlier, Carl says, I'm not sure where Ben gets his facts and figures. I'm assuming a Happy Feet ice cream stick. But at this point, he seems the answer to the right, what Biden is to the left. Oh.
I was talking about GDP per capita.
All right. And Diana says, yes, I agree that smartphones should be banned for children. It's far too much for the young, also detrimental to their mental health and also the cost involved. Right. Thank you for those. Now it's time for us to head live to Malmo for all the latest ahead of the Eurovision Song Contest tonight. GB News reporter Charlie Peters is over there. Any protests at the venue tonight, Charlie?
Yes, Darren, in the last moments, just in the last minute or so, there have been some scuffles between pro-Palestinian protesters who've suddenly emerged outside the venue and the police here, who have formed a perimeter just outside the venue, just towards the edge of this square here. There is a gathering of people with Palestinian flags and also some of the keffiyeh, the Arab solidarity scarves that are often worn by protesters. We did see some clashes here. A man is receiving treatment just a few meters away from me. It seems he has an eye injury or a facial injury after a scuffle with the police. No arrests as far as I can tell, but the police arrived very suddenly to deal with this swarm. Now, earlier today, there were thousands of protesters in the south of Malmo in a 1,000-strong protest that marched from the centre of the town towards a park in the west side. Now, while the protests outside the arena have been quite limited, the thousands that we saw in the south included some more extreme chants. We saw flags for the PFLP, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, which is designated a terrorist organisation by the United States, Canada, Japan, and indeed the European Union. So quite brazen to see PFLP flags on display in Europe.
And we've
also seen people chanting for the end of Israel.
We're just seeing, Charlie, some live footage, live feed of the police really scrambling, actually, as the sort of line, as it were, is being pushed at by protesters trying to get through. I mean, it doesn't look like it's all a nest of singing birds, put it that way.
Yeah, there was a very significant scuffle here, and it comes on the backdrop of a chaotic day at Eurovision. I mean, in the last 20 minutes, the Finnish vote announcer said that they would be withdrawing from tonight's performance. That comes just a couple of hours after Norway's jury vote announcer also said they couldn't get involved. The Finnish representative saying that it just felt wrong. We've also seen statements coming from the Irish camp. They've said that there was some inappropriate comments being made by the Israeli broadcaster a couple of nights ago. They've lodged a complaint. And then Eurovision, meant to be a non-political event, we did see the French contestant deliver a speech halfway through his final rehearsal earlier today, which referred to the motto of Eurovision, United by Music, and made references to a need for peace and other claims. This all going on at the same time, of course, as much of the world's focus in Malmo is on the situation with the Israeli contestant, Idi Golan. As this serious security presence you're seeing here gathers outside the venue to try and secure that perimeter, there has also been a tremendous effort to protect the Israeli contestant at her hotel. We do know that the head of Shin Bet, Israel's MI5, flew out earlier in the week to provide a direct oversight of the security plans. Quite a significant step amid the country's existential war in Gaza and other zones in the Near East as it tackles Iran-backed proxies. So it has been a day of total chaos here. 160 million expected to tune in. And while all of this madness is going on, everyone's talking about the Croatian performer Lasagna Baby, who is the bookies' favourite to win tonight, serving up a hot favourite song, Lasagna Baby. It's quite remarkable, I know, but here we are. And the second odds-on favourite is an Israeli contestant. By contrast, Ollie Alexander coming in for the United Kingdom, 175 to 1 with the bookies. Keep the faith, Ollie.
Yeah, so well, there's no surprises there. And I mean, I don't know about Israel, but if I were thinking that the Finnish had dropped out and they're saying they're not going to support us anymore, and that the Irish aren't either, I don't think Israel are going to be crying themselves to sleep, put it that way. But look, I think Israel stand a good chance, though, do you not, Charlie?
Well, they're certainly doing a significant PR campaign on their social media feeds. Israeli representatives and, of course, Eden Galan, they're pretty confident. They think they're in for the shot. The bookies seem to think so as well. And if all this chaos that we're seeing today moves voters in one direction, based on what we've seen, demands for Israel to be shut down, the country to no longer exist, support for an extremist organisation such as the PFLP, it might not necessarily swing European viewers in favour of the competing countries.
Well, we live in hope. But thank you very much, Charlie Peters, for that update there. Stay safe as ever. Now, folks, any
what a mess.
Any thoughts on that?
You know what?
Where do you start? Where do you begin?
On who we think might win Eurovision?
Oh, no, not... Well, yeah, I mean, you can answer that.
I mean, I didn't.
But I just mean the sort of broader, everything that's going on.
I just think, quite often, when music and politics and everyone gets upset, I just think, shut up and enjoy the music. That's all that comes to mind, because it's meant to be an event where people come together, they have fun, they listen to awful, you know, Euro pop music and tacky outfits, a bit like Darren's. And
I can't say
and then that's what Eurovision is about. It is not about Israel and Gaza.
You know, they're becoming the modern snowflakes, the pro-Palestine protesters, aren't they? I mean, any mention of the word Israel and they're there with their flags and their protesters, it's just getting ridiculous. This poor girl, she's 21 years old, 20 years old. She's just trying to sing on stage.
Well,
she's not conducting the war.
Do you think, actually, Eden Golan becoming a proxy for the Israeli government, 20-year-old having to have the highest possible Israeli protection and threats to her life.
Yeah.
She was told to stay in a hotel. I mean, that must be, like, psychologically, for a 20-year-old kid. You are a kid at 20, I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound patronising.
No, definitely.
But, yeah, that must feel awful, right?
Well, I was writing about this yesterday, and the thing that I wanted to get across is you've got no idea what she actually believes, right? You've got no idea. You don't know what her connection is to the government, to Netanyahu, you know, to the IDF, how she votes. You don't know any of it. And also, if she's in a very particular position on the world stage at this moment representing Israel, that's a huge amount of pressure on her. And she probably just wants the politics to go away and to be allowed to do her job.
And she's very talented.
Yeah, and she's just a singer and a dancer and a performer. She isn't a politician. She doesn't need to make a political statement about her country. Just let her perform.
The demographic of Malmo, where the event is taking place tonight, is about 40-50% migrant. So,
right, okie doke, folks. Still ahead, we discuss the big issues in Bunch of Five. Has the support of Rishi Sunak sunk in the sales of his Adidas Samba trainers? And J.K. Rowling weighs in on transgender referees. You won't want to miss that one. Next of all, though, parents Nikki Hodgson and Ben Leo go head-to-head on whether crying babies should be allowed in restaurants. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tonight, most of us it should be dry, and that gives us another opportunity to see the northern lights. So at the moment we have got high pressure clinging on, but that will move towards the continent as we go through the next few days, heralding a change to the weather. But before we get there, plenty of clear skies tonight away from the eastern seaboard. So yeah, an excellent opportunity to see the northern lights, especially across more northern parts of the country. And despite the clear skies, it's going to be a mild night for most of us. Temperatures in towns and cities firmly in double figures. So for most of us, a bright start on Sunday morning. Quite murky across some northern and eastern areas, but the low cloud will gradually burn its way back towards the North Sea. Showers breaking out fairly early on across parts of Northern Ireland, and then as the day goes on, parts of Scotland, Wales, England, down towards the very far southwest, seeing a few thunderstorms developing. Some of these will be torrential. Warnings are in force as we go through the course of Sunday. In the sunshine, though, temperatures reaching 27 degrees. But then on to Monday, another band of rain moves in from the southwest. It takes a fair time to get anywhere further north than Wales in the southwest. So for the rest of us, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. That sets us up for a fairly changeable middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to something a little bit near normal for the time of year.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive?
Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. Thank you for your company. Your emails have been coming in and your messages, and a very nice one from James. James says, hello. I've just tuned in to tonight's The Saturday Five. First time I've seen it. I love the format, the panel, the presenters, and the variety topic discussion. Well, your £5 is in the post.
You forgot to read the bit where he said, but not your top, Darren.
Very good. Very much. Now, though, it's time for this. Yes, indeedy. It's time for tonight's main event. We're used to crying babies around here with Benjamin Butterworth on most weeks, but it seems they are not always so welcome. One woman has complained that her romantic night out was ruined by the constant din of crying babies and called on the parents to use Deliveroo instead. Well, who better to debate this than the two parents on the panel, Nikki Hodgson and Ben Leo. Seconds out, ding ding, it's round one.
All right, Nikki, I'll start. I just want you to tell me why you think it's acceptable to ruin people's dinners by having your crying sprog there. Why can't you just leave them at home with a babysitter or a nanny, or best, if you have to bring them, my policy personally is if my kid's crying, I take them out. If I can't sort it out, I just won't return and ruin the whole evening for the entire restaurant. Why would you contest that?
Well, let's take babies rather than toddlers to start off with and say that actually if they're little, it's very hard to find somebody else to look after them. Either you can't find paid babysitters very easily, maybe you don't have family around, maybe as a mum you just don't want to leave your child with someone else, because when they're really tiny you have a lot of hormones circling around telling you to just cling on to that child at all costs. So if we ban babies from restaurants, we effectively ban mothers from restaurants.
No, I don't want to ban babies from restaurants. I'm saying that if you cannot control the baby or you can't soothe it enough that it's not going to disrupt everyone else who's paying very good money, probably in most cases, to be in that restaurant, you should leave and go home.
Most parents do not want to be in a restaurant with their own screaming child, right?
So why would you do it?
Well, past a point, look, we don't know how much the baby was actually screaming. Is it just because this person has not got children that they have a particular, vendetta against them? If a child's really in distress, and of course the parent, you're going to walk out because you don't want other people to look at you like you're doing a terrible job anyway. But if you are a new mum, one of the only places you can go actually is a restaurant with your partner for a meal. And actually, let's be honest, most babies are either feeding or sleeping, they're not crying.
OK, so would you, if your own baby, I'm not sure how old your kids are, but if you had a baby, or even a toddler, I've got 2 toddlers, well, 1.5's not a toddler, but if you had a baby crying in a restaurant and you couldn't soothe them, you took them out, you tried to sort it out, you came back in, they were still crying, what would you do?
Three attempts and then I'd leave, yeah. But you've got to give people a chance to settle them.
Yeah, OK, well, we're
Great
debate, guys, fantastic.
Well, that was fine.
Let's
talk about my shirt.
As someone who doesn't have children, I actually really don't mind. I really.
I do.
No, come on, Albie, don't be such a.
I do. I've got it. No.
Look,
seriously.
Hang on a second, because it's look. Most people will be a parent at some point. A lot of people will be parents at some point in their life, and it's difficult. It's difficult to have children. I've got a variety of brothers and I've seen them all at different stages in their life. Some of them been toddlers while I've been an adult, and it's hard work for a parent, and they just want a bit of relief, and sometimes that means they've got to go to a restaurant.
I want relief from the stresses of day-to-day life when I go out to a nice restaurant for dinner.
You go back to your Soho house where you...
Yeah, but there's kids. There's even kids there in the morning. This is what I'm talking about. You go there in the morning. There's children everywhere, and you just think, I don't want to be around all of these families, children screaming in the pool. I don't want it. I want to go somewhere to relax, to enjoy my food and drink, and spend my hard-earned money doing something I want to do without some baby, you know, screaming in my ear.
But the thing about raising these children is that they are going to be paying for your pension and sorting you out in your old age. You know, that's how it works.
No, Albie wants mass immigration, Nicky. I don't know if you realise.
We do have to support them.
Well, Nicky, do you think actually this is becoming a deterrent for people having kids, like the pressures of all these kinds of things where people are saying, well, actually, I don't know if I can ever go to well, especially during the early stages of infancy, of actually being able to go to a restaurant and things like that because you're so worried.
Well, no, this is really
interesting. Is that a deterrent?
No, but this is interesting because actually I took my daughter when she was 6 months old to Valencia in Spain. She came out every night with us and ate tapas, you know, at 9 o'clock with all the other Spanish babies, got on with it and was great. And the reason she was good is because she was actually in that environment and she got used to it. Whereas actually here, because we're afraid of taking children out to restaurants, they never get good table manners at a young age. And they never get used to being told to be quiet and all the rest of it. So actually, we're afraid of having families around us, and as a result, they behave worse.
So do you think actually discipline's the problem as well, in part?
Yeah, partly, and just exposure, you know, just not making a restaurant a weird environment.
Yes. OK. I mean, do you agree with that as well?
Generally, look, I'd say this as a parent, but I would go for dinner. Of course, I go out for lunch with my kids and maybe, you know, a cheap dinner with my kids, but particularly at an expensive restaurant or if I'm on a date night with my wife or something like that, I don't want kids around.
Yeah.
Leave your kids at home. And also, there's nothing worse than having feral kids running around restaurants. Some parents let them just run around in between chairs, getting under your feet.
I do think that's
they're like dogs. You just under your feet, toys everywhere, demanding iPads. You know, if it's a particularly special night, and again, I say this as a parent, leave your kids at home, pay for a babysitter or a nanny, or if you can't do that, don't come out.
Yeah, but I also hate it when I see parents out for dinner with their children, and the two parents are on their phones, and the children are on iPads. I just think, well, what's the point? Yeah. What's the point?
Especially when Miriam Cates is sat in the corner.
Exactly.
Still ahead, we answer all of your searching questions in Ask the Five. I can't wait. But next in Bunch of Five, should you use an AI concierge to go on loads of dates so you don't have to? And sales of Adidas Samba are dropping. That's on Rishi Sunak's feet for those watching on TV. Is Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to blame? You're with the Saturday Five, live on GB News.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
Organisations, plural, because there's loads of people doing this, that organisations are charging schools to be part of this odd league table about who's trying to outdo who when it comes to who is more trans inclusive with the kids than the next person. There's something makes me uneasy about this.
Supposing a child comes home and says, you think, oh, I've done well today. He said, well, how have you done? He said, well, I was #1 painter, or I was #1 reader. No, I wasn't. I was made LGBT champion. You know, this is a 4- and 5-year-old. Look, I can understand this, actually, as we develop into the secondary school. I can understand more debates taking place. I cannot understand why we have to thrust it at young children. And I think if you ask the parents, they'd be hostile to it. And what about the role the teacher has to play in all this?
Society has been one way, the pendulum is swinging the other way, and they're pushing it very far in order to kind of proliferate change. And this is probably the toughest period in that evolutionary process, because the LGBTQ+ plus community is saying that you've got to really rage against the machine to get people to listen. Because put it like this now, even this conversation, the whole country is listening, the whole world is listening. These are the kinds of eyeballs and ears they haven't had before. And there's going to be friction. There's going to be a locking of heads in the process to getting to a point where you establish a new equilibrium where they feel more incorporated. Like I've said, the greatest force of allies that the LGBTQ plus community has always had is heterosexual women. What you're moving towards now is doing things that is beginning to turn them from allies into people who feel that, oh, for you to thrive, I'm being deprived, and that's a problem. When they realise you're alienating allies, they will understand you've got to recalibrate to have that kind of understanding between both parties.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday Five. Your comments are flying in as ever. Thank you very much. On our Your Say page, Sheila says, if Meghan is 43% Nigerian, then she is 57% something else. To which Paul replied, the 57% is grifter. That was funny. Now, Francisco says, on the subject of babies not being allowed in restaurants, they also shouldn't be allowed in first-class lounges.
I agree.
Or first-class flights.
Disagree.
No. That's just classism. That's nothing to do with babies.
But it's the whole point of the class system is classism anyway, isn't it?
They just learn it young, yeah.
Francisco's living quite the life as well. Thank you very much for watching from the first-class lounge of wherever you are. And Wally says, hi, Nikki, if you are a young mother with a baby going to a restaurant, then you do not have a cost.
Well, I'm not young for a start, so, I can't say the rest of it.
No. Right, now it's time for this. Dee Dee, it's the bunch of five. Who's going to start us off?
I am. I saw this absolutely hilarious video on Twitter that Turning Point UK reposted. Just have a watch and then we'll chat about it.
It's currently 3 a.m. This is Al-Arir Square. It's actually Abercrombie Square, but for some reason that's part of Palestine now. And we're going to give them a nice little wake-up call.
So this was a student at a British university who went to one of where the pro-Palestine protesters were sleeping on his university campus. He blew a foghorn and then started playing Rule Britannia, as you heard just then, to wake them all up after all the disruption that they've been causing in that university town and to all of the students, especially the Jewish students at that university. So quite funny, I thought. That's why I brought it up. What do you make of it?
The student who's doing it says to this guy accosts him and says, what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this at 3 a.m? And he says, are you a student at this university? And the man said, no. And I thought, well, you can't tell him to not to play music when you don't even have a right to be camping out on the lawn, the university lawn.
Yeah, it's all a bit odd. I mean, I love a good protest. I protested many a time in my youth, I was there fighting against Iraq and all the rest of it. And obviously I'm left wing, but I don't know, would I care if somebody do that? I'd just be thinking of the next thing that I could do to get back on him. I mean, it's the bit of the game, isn't it?
It's counter-protesting, right? So, yeah, it's great. I love it. I love the patriotism in it as well. I think that really wind them up. Really wind them up.
He's done well. Good kid. Right, Nikki.
Oh, excellent. Right, so would you like a computer to pick your potential mates for you? Well, this is what Whitney Wolf of dating app Bumble is suggesting. She wants AI to troll through hundreds of profiles and find the right person for you.
The share price of Bumble is in the gutter, by the way, under her watch, so sounds like an awful idea, as reflected in the share price.
I think dating apps have ruined dating, and I've actually... Now I talk to people in the gym rather than use apps because I just don't. I've been on apps for such a long time and it's not been successful. And I don't actually think we need AI to help us date. I just think we need to talk to each other more.
We need more humanity.
You know, I've seen some really interesting innovations with AI in dating, and actually it might actually improve the current swipe system and find people who are more like you as a person. Which so I'm not saying it's. I'm not agreeing that it's ideal to use technology for dating, but it actually might help you get a more compatible person.
The algorithm's terrible.
Yeah, but,
Liz,
the problem is historically, right? We've tried to do this algorithm thing, like pick up, get what qualities make the perfect partner for each individual, and it doesn't work. We've been doing it since the 1960s. That's not what works. What works is actually talking to someone, giving them a chance, getting to know them. And I met my husband on a dating app. It was a terrible geolocation one, so it was basically like a stalker app. And I asked him how he picked me, and he was like,
it wasn't Grindr, was it?
No, it wasn't Grindr. He said it was a matter of numbers, and I just happened to reply.
Yeah.
So
It is
wasn't really
numbers.
anything flattering.
But it's about meeting. There's so much you can't tell about a person until you meet them, what they smell like, their body language. There's so much that you just pick up on by being in the same space as someone.
I think people need to put down their phones and technology when it comes to romance and get out and just meet people.
Well, I don't know about that. Your wife just found out that you vote for the Green Party.
She doesn't even know what the Green Party is, trust me. But I think there's it's sad the way that people just can't approach someone in a bar anymore or on the street or go up to a woman and say, "Oh, hi, how you doing? Do you fancy a drink?" Like, it's just everyone's so pathetic and mute. It's
Okay. Right, Lucy Clark is the world's first openly transgender referee. Now, Lucy Clark has made history by becoming this first trans manager in the top 5 divisions of English women's football. Now, J.K. Rowling got involved. He's on screen now for those watching. J.K. Rowling said, "When I was young, all the football managers were straight, white, middle-aged blokes. So it's fantastic to see how things have changed." Judging by that picture, well,
what you can't see from that picture is how broad her shoulders are.
Yes. It's quite something, really.
I mean, I don't agree with J.K. Rowling and everything, but she is funny.
She highlights it. She highlights the issue pretty well in that picture.
She is funny.
Well, yeah, I don't know. It is quite funny, but at the same time, it is just bashing trans people, isn't it? It's just a bit cheap and easy.
Oh, I don't know. Can we get that picture up again for a sec?
But don't we like cheap and easy jokes?
If you look at that, that's a wig. That's what's happened here.
Yeah,
a wig has been,
it really is.
Loads of people wear bad wigs. I mean, think about all the politicians with terrible wigs.
But
they get called out for it, don't they? Though that's the thing.
What it takes to be classed as a woman, right? Are we not saying that something really derogatory about?
Well, there's a lot of cis women with terrible hair.
What's a cis?
Probably one of me.
What's
It's just like I don't know. It's like amusing. I don't know. I'm going to be the Benjamin Butterworth of the evening, obviously, and just be like,
indeed.
I think it's disgusting that we're all mocking trans people.
Well, that's why we pay you the big bucks. Then it's your turn. Get your wig on.
Apparently, really famous insults and phrases from a great British favourite, Only Fools and Horses, are going extinct. Phrases like pillock, plonker, and you can see the word on the screen there. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say it under Ofcom rules, but it rhymes with DOS and ends with pot. So they're among the British insults that
just in case you can't read.
Or you're listening on the radio.
At risk of dying out. Top of the list of words that young people especially, hadn't heard of was lummox, which flummoxed 62% of people under 28, and it means a clumsy or stupid person.
Yeah.
And just over half had never heard of that term, and blighter was third on the list, and it stumped 54% of young people.
Wow.
Blighter, of course, is a light-hearted word for a
Really?
single
Have you
person.
not?
Never. Blighter.
Yeah, have you not heard that before?
Never heard
blighter.
And I wartime euphemism.
No, I know blight, but not a blighter.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard all of this before, but lummox, I certainly haven't heard that for a while, actually. To say now you say it, yeah.
Pratt. I quite like Pratt.
Yeah.
People use Pratt.
Darren is such a Pratt.
Do you know, we could use these words to insult each other because they're all Ofcom compliant, aren't they?
Yeah, but not the one rhyming with DOS.
No, we can't say that.
That was already on the screen, anyways.
Yes.
I wonder how they come up with those horrendous, silly rules, aren't they?
As some of the younger people on the panel, do you, Albie and Alex, do you watch Only Fools and Horses? Do you?
Alex, what is it?
I'm 33, so I'm actually older than Darren.
How dare you?
You know what? I'm going to take that. I look younger than half the people. Fantastic.
My father-in-law loves Only Fools and Horses. Do you ever watch it? Have you watched it?
I've watched it. Yeah.
Albie?
Brilliant.
I've never seen it.
I grew up watching it.
Who was in it?
David, he was David Jason, is it?
Yeah, David Jason.
And who was Rodney?
Nicholas
Lyndhurst.
Yeah. There you go.
These are all just words.
Yes.
So relaxed.
Yes. Do you wear a pair of Adidas Sambas? If so, have you thrown them in the bin in the last week? Because since Rishi Sunak was pictured wearing them, Adidas share prices crashed 11%. Quicker than Darren crashed Ralph Lauren this evening after wearing that shirt. So I don't know if there's any Samba
are available, I promise.
Any Samba wearers here on the panel tonight? No?
No.
Would you buy a pair now, Nikki? Now
I
you see
never
Rishi
bought
Sunak.
them in the first place. My
would you
trainers
be
are
more
Valentino,
deterred?
darling. So
Okay,
just like,
but would you be more deterred now if I said, right, it's a pair of Sambas versus another brand? I said you get them for free.
Yeah, but I do my research. I don't look to people for inspiration. I just go with what I want. But if he's wearing it, then I don't want to wear it. That's true, yeah.
What do you think, Ben?
Do you think actually this is as a consequence of the Prime Minister wearing them?
Well, why not? Why wouldn't it be?
I mean,
I'm not saying who's taking style tips from this guy. The man that has one hoodie.
I actually
he has
think
those, like, you know, I mean,
I
can't dress.
I bet you he wishes he was influencing his polling numbers better than he's influencing the sale of trainers.
Well, maybe he needs to think about a connection there. There's probably a deal he could do with Adidas, I'm sure.
Ben, what were you going to say?
I can't remember. I was going to say, I think Rishi Sunak dresses quite snazzily, yeah. Well.
I think he's quite... For a Prime Minister, I mean, look, don't you remember Boris Johnson? I mean, he looked terrible. Theresa May was a smart dresser, but I think Rishi Sunak is probably our smartest
I like watching Boris run around
male
in school
Prime
queues,
Minister.
going for his morning runs. I thought it was absolutely hilarious.
But Theresa looked great.
Remember Theresa May being photographed in number 10 wearing a full leather outfit that cost like 10,000.
In Vogue, I thought it was brilliant. I thought she looked hilarious. I thought it was great. She sat there, she had the wind blowing her hair, the bit of the hair that was there at least anyway.
What's really quickly interesting about this story is Keir Starmer's, some of his outfits as well have, since he's worn them though, have gone up. They pushed some of the share price up on those brands. So interesting.
Why can't we have hot politicians? Wouldn't that be great?
I'm not elected yet, Albie.
And he will be standing for the Green Party. So, long way off, yeah.
No. Right, OK, it's almost time. We're headed off, but first of all, it's time for this. Let's have a gander at what you've got for us this week. The first question is from Sally. Sally says, hi, you five. Great to see Nikki on the show. This hot weather got us arguing about a very important topic earlier. Which is better, a lolly or an ice cream?
Well, I'll answer this because I treated the whole office to ice creams and lollies earlier. I was feeling kind. And I bought some Twisters. There was a choice of Soleros, Twisters or Clippos. And I was thinking, is a Twister an ice cream or a lolly?
A lolly.
Probably a lolly, but there is some ice cream in there.
Yeah, interesting.
No wonder you're on air so much.
I've got to afford all this ice cream. Do I prefer ice cream or lollies? Do you know, I think I prefer ice cream.
Nikki?
Yeah, definitely ice cream. Every time.
Alex?
Lollies, yeah.
I think I'd say ice cream as well.
Ice cream, yeah.
Why do you like lollies so much, Alex?
Because it's just like once you've eaten a meal, and ice cream on top of that's quite a lot. So a lolly's just like water and sugar, basically.
And do you bite lollies or do you suck lollies?
Yes, bite.
Because we're having this conversation in the studio.
All right. Tommy's written in, and Tommy says, hi, everyone. I'm planning an Avengers marathon with my housemates tomorrow. If you could pick... I hope that's not an Avengers question. If you could pick a superpower to have yourself, which would it be?
Oh, I have this one in the bag. Reading minds. I mean, how useful would that be for this show? I can know exactly what you're thinking before you're going to say.
Do you want to
mind
know?
readings? No, I think that'd be so fascinating. Yeah, absolutely. But you probably hear a lot of things about you that people think you wouldn't like to hear.
I think I'd like to be invisible and just mooch around and...
Pervert.
I knew that was coming.
I think...
You can listen.
I think I'd like to be I'd like to know everything. I'm a very curious person. I don't mean by snooping around like Ben Leo in people's homes.
Mine would be to be able to clean while asleep, so I don't have to think about doing it.
It would be what, sorry?
Be able to clean up while asleep.
Nikki, that's the worst superpower ever. Female oppressed superpower
If you are a feminist and a time-pressed mum, that is superb.
That's just so she can go to the garage.
You know, it's called hire a cleaner. It's the same power. it's the same thing with that.
What would my superpower be? I'd quite like to be able to fly, I think.
I thought you were going to say I'd quite like a Conservative Party seat.
I'd quite like to meet David Cameron for 10 minutes.
I've met David Cameron for 10 minutes.
OK, all right, Alvin, sorry. It was only a joke, Alvin.
Thank you very much to our guests tonight, Nikki Hodgson and Alex Armstrong, and of course to all our brilliant viewers. Mark has written in, and Mark says, those insults are not dying out. I often shout them at woke idiots on GB News. P.S. Not you, Darren.
What about me?
We'll do it on your behalf.
It's the brilliant Leo Curse. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to tonight, most of us it should be dry, and that gives us another opportunity to see the northern lights. So at the moment we have got high pressure clinging on, but that will move towards the continent as we go through the next few days, heralding a change to the weather. But before we get there, plenty of clear skies tonight away from the eastern seaboard. So yeah, an excellent opportunity to see the northern lights, especially across more northern parts of the country. And despite the clear skies, it's going to be a mild night for most of us. Temperatures in towns and cities firmly in double figures. So for most of us, a bright start on Sunday morning. Quite murky across some northern and eastern areas, but the low cloud will gradually burn its way back towards the North Sea. Showers breaking out fairly early on across parts of Northern Ireland, and then as the day goes on, parts of Scotland, Wales, England, down towards the very far south, we're seeing a few thunderstorms developing. Some of these will be torrential. Warnings are in force as we go through the course of Sunday. In the sunshine, though, temperatures reaching 27 degrees. But then on to Monday, another band of rain moves in from the southwest. It takes a fair time to get anywhere further north than Wales in the southwest. So for the rest of us, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers. That sets us up for a fairly changeable middle part of the week, with temperatures returning to something a little bit near normal for the time of year.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers.